Hey, fifth grade. So here we are working on our Seeds of Change project. You should have already done your background with your complementary color. Remember the color that's across from each other on the color wheel from your primary food item. So I'm going to talk about how to start coloring that main food item. So remember, you're focusing on highlights and shadows. You're making sure that you're able to incorporate those highlights and shadows into your final picture. So a highlight is where light hits an object. So it's where the most light is absorbed. And it's where it's the brightest, truest, almost white color. So in my image, my light source is coming from across my paper. So that means that my highlight will hit my strawberry right here. In your picture, there might be some areas that look like there are two highlights. You're looking for the purest white part to really indicate your actual true highlight. So what I've done here is I've just gone and done a back and forth coloring to color my farthest away food item first. I'm going to leave my closest one till the end. And since I use colored pencils, I can actually take my eraser and I can just bring my highlight by using my eraser. I didn't worry about it when I was working on it before. If you're using a material that won't allow you to erase, you have to be aware of where that highlight is. And if you notice, some areas of that highlight will be larger and other areas will be a little bit smaller. So again, really pay attention to that image that you're working off of. And remember, your object, they're three-dimensional, so they're not just going to have one spot. They might have a little bit of another highlight opposite of that first one. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to build up my colors because I've got a very flat looking object. So that's what I'm going to go into that scumbling technique again, which is those small overlapping circles. And I'm going to start to really build up those colors in my image. So whenever you have two objects overlapping each other, so I have these two strawberries overlapping each other, and even the green of the top of my strawberry overlapping here, the object that's underneath will always be darker because the object on top creates a shadow or casts a shadow on the object below it. So I'm going through, I'm adding some scumbling technique wherever I see objects overlap each other. And I'm putting I'm giving the object on the bottom that shadow. So I'm building up that color. So on your own images, you should be building up the colors as well. And again, when you're coloring a three-dimensional object, you need to make sure that you're coloring it so that you're representing the shape. You're not just doing it up and down coloring. You're really curving it to fit that object itself. So I'm curving my coloring as I go. And again, make sure you're looking at your image. My strawberry right now doesn't have the seeds on it because that's a detail. And I will add those details once I'm happier with the overall color of my image. So I'm building up that color, I'm bringing it up. And then the other thing is that you might not have enough colors in your color palette that you're working with to really make all of those highlights and shadows. So for me, I only have two colors of red. So that's all I really have to work with to make this darker, or so I would think. However, we learned about those complementary colors, the colors that are across from each other on the color wheel. And we know that when you mix those two colors together, they neutralize each other or make the other one or the first one darker. So what I'm going to do to help make my strawberry darker where things are overlapping is I'm going to take my complementary color of green and I'm going to start and build that color. I'm not going to press as hard as I can. I'm not going to, indent my paper with my green, but I'm starting to really layer that green into it. I can color across to kind of help with some of those lines that I've created from doing my scumbling technique. But again, I want to make sure that I'm really curving my coloring. And you might be like, Miss Martinelli, that looks like, you've just done you've just added green on top. When is it to blend in? So don't be afraid to layer your colors. So I'm adding it all over the place where I see those shadows. And then I'll come and I'll take those other colors that I was using and I will blend them on top to really help push that green color to the distance, to the back. So I'll start to make my shadow that way. And don't be afraid to like look at your picture from a different angle. Sometimes looking at it upside down will help you see where you need to add some color. Sometimes doing a squinty eye, so making your eyes kind of very narrow and looking at it will help you identify where your next set of shadows goes. Remember, you can also use that hatching technique, those lines, or that cross hatching technique to help make some areas darker. And if you'd even like to bring in some more of those cool colors, like some more of those blues or those purples to help make things darker, you can do that as well. Don't be afraid to go very dark with your shadows. Shadows are there for a reason. They help make an object look three-dimensional and look real. Sometimes as young artists it can be scary to add them. But, so, there we go. I've started to add those. I'd still go back and add some more, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I think we're okay. Then I'd go back and I'd really start to add those details. So I've got my little pieces of seeds, and I don't have to add every single seed. I'm just going to add a couple of them in parts, and I'm drawing them out first. I don't add them in the highlight, because in a true highlight, those details almost get erased because of the white reflecting off of it. I'm just putting a couple in strategic places. And then I'd come back and I'd color them in, and I'd also give them highlights and shadows to the best of my ability so they don't just look flat. And around each of these is indented as well. And so there's kind of a shadow around each of them. And I'd help kind of blend that out with my scumbling technique. Again, look at your image. It tells you so much about what's going on. All right, my friends, I hope you learned a lot, but if you have any questions, let me know.